The Council's desperation. The holographic star map in the Grand Council chamber flickered with dying light. 5 red markers pulsed where thriving worlds had once existed. Telvar 4, the agricultural heart of the Kashari Empire. Prometheus Station, humanity's own mining outpost. Dren Call, home to 3 billion souls. All gone. All consumed by the Zokran Collective in less than 3 standard months. Ambassador, Terran of the Avian Confederacy, stood at the center of the chamber. His feathers dulled with exhaustion, his voice cracking as he addressed the assembled representatives. "We are losing this war," he said, the words tasting like ash in his beak. "Our fleets are scattered. Our armies are broken. The Zokran advance cannot be stopped by conventional means." Around the circular chamber, representatives from 47 species sat in various states of despair. The insectoid Vrix clicked their mandibles nervously. The crystalline Luminar dimmed their inner light. Even the proud Korthan warriors, who had never known defeat in 3,000 years of recorded history, sat with heads bowed, their honor scars seeming to fade in the chamber's cold light. "We have one option remaining," Terran continued, his talons gripping the podium until they creaked. "I have sent the emergency beacon to all member species, including those who have not yet contributed military forces." He paused, his eyes scanning the chamber. 3 have responded. 2 have declined, citing the futility of resistance. "And the third?" rumbled Commander Vex of the Korthan Legion, his voice like grinding stone. Theron's feathers ruffled, a sign of discomfort among his people. "Humanity has accepted the call to arms." Silence fell across the chamber, followed immediately by a wave of incredulous laughter. Chapter 2. The Galaxy's Mockery? The Humans? Commander Vex's laughter boomed through the chamber like thunder. "The poets? The traders? The species that spends more time painting pictures than building warships?" He slammed a massive fist against his armrest. "This is what we've been reduced to? Begging artists for military aid?" Representative Silvara of the Aquarian depths swirled in her containment sphere, her translated voice dripping with disdain. "I have studied human biology extensively. They are fragile. Their bones break easily. They lack natural armor, venom, claws, or any significant combat adaptations. By galactic standards, they are prey animals. They don't even have a proper warrior caste," added Merchant Prince Zexalon of the Trill Combine. "Their entire species is ... homogeneous. Farmers, scientists, artists, all capable of becoming soldiers. It's absurd. Warfare requires specialization, breeding, genetic superiority." Theron raised a wing for silence, but the mockery continued to ripple through the chamber. Only Ambassador Elena Vasquez of Humanity sat quietly in her designated seat, her dark eyes unreadable, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Perhaps," Vex continued, standing to his full 3-meter height, "we should simply surrender to the Zokran now and save ourselves the embarrassment of watching humans attempt warfare. I have analyzed their military specifications. They propose sending 500 advisors to Korvath Prime." He snorted. 500. The Zokran have 40,000 shock troops surrounding that colony. It will be a massacre. "Then you have nothing to lose," Vasquez said quietly, speaking for the first time. Her voice cut through the chamber like a blade through silk. The laughter died. "Nothing to lose?" Vex turned his burning gaze upon her. "Except the lives of 500 of your people, human. Does that mean nothing to you?" Vasquez stood slowly, smoothing her diplomatic robes. "We accept the risks, Commander. But I would ask one thing of this council." "What?" Theron asked. "When my people deploy to Korvath Prime, monitor the situation closely. Watch what happens. And then," she paused, her smile widening just slightly, "we'll discuss how many more advisors you'd like us to send." The chamber erupted in renewed laughter as Vasquez sat down. But something in her eyes made Theron's feathers prickle with unease. It was the same look he'd seen in apex predators back on his homeworld, calm, patient, and utterly certain of the kill. Chapter 3. First Contact. The Siege of Korvath. Prime General Kraz of the Zokran Collective stood on the ridge, overlooking Korvath Prime's main settlement. His four arms crossed in satisfaction. Below, the mining colony huddled behind makeshift barriers, pathetic defenses that would fall within hours once he gave the order to. Attack. Status report. He growled to his communications. Officer, 40,000 shock troops in position, General. Artillery units ready. Air superiority established. The colonists have approximately 2,000 armed defenders. The officer's carapace gleamed in the light of Korvath's twin suns. They cannot win. And these? Humans? The so-called reinforcements? 500 arrived by transport 6 hours ago. They've dispersed throughout the colony. Our scouts report they're carrying primitive kinetic weapons and establishing what appear to be observation posts rather than defensive positions. The officer's mandibles clicked with amusement. They're digging holes in the ground, General. Kraz's laugh rumbled through his thorax. Holes, marvelous. The galaxy's great hope digs holes. He turned to his command staff. We attack at dawn. I want prisoners, especially the humans. The collective will enjoy studying what passes for warriors among that soft species. That night, Kraz retired to his command bunker, confident in tomorrow's victory. He fell into the deep sleep of the certain conqueror. He awoke to screaming. General! General, you must see this. His aide burst into his quarters, all four arms trembling. What is it? Kraz demanded, rising from his sleeping platform. The 3rd Battalion. They're gone. Gone? What do you mean, gone? On the command center's displays, aerial footage showed the 3rd Battalion's encampment. Or rather, what remained of it. 200 soldiers vanished. Their weapons lay in neat stacks. Their armor sat empty, as if the soldiers had simply evaporated from within them. No signs of struggle. No bodies. No blood dot, just silence. Have they deserted? Kraz roared. No, sir. The perimeter guards saw nothing. Heard nothing. One moment the camp was quiet soldiers sleeping in their assigned positions. The next moment, empty. Kraz's claws gouged marks in the metal table. Find them. Search the entire perimeter. They cannot have simply disappeared. But they had. Chapter 4. The unraveling by the end of the first week. General Kraz had lost 800 soldiers. Not to combat, there had been no combat. They simply vanished. Sometimes entire squads. Sometimes individual soldiers who stepped away from their units to relieve themselves and never returned. Sometimes officers who retired to their quarters and were found missing in the morning, their rooms sealed from the inside. The humans are responsible, Kraz insisted during the daily command meeting. But even he could hear the uncertainty in his voice. We've never engaged them, General, his intelligence officer reported. Our drones detect them periodically, small groups, moving through the colony, always in defensive postures. They don't leave the perimeter. They couldn't possibly be reaching our positions. Then who? Kraz slammed his fists on the table. Who's taking my soldiers? The supply lines had become unreliable. Convoys departed from the rear echelons and never arrived at the front. Communications between battalions had grown sporadic, messages garbled, frequencies jammed by interference no one could identify. Officers reported seeing movement in their peripheral vision, shadows that shouldn't exist, sounds that had no source. The most disturbing reports came from survivors, the few soldiers who had been with comrades when they vanished. We were on patrol, one trooper reported, his voice hollow. Castor was walking beside me. We were talking about his mate, his hatchlings. I looked down to check my scanner for just a moment, and when I looked up, he was gone. No sound, no trace. Just gone. I was alone in the dark. I heard Valzak screaming in his bunk. We broke down the door. It was sealed from inside, and found his armor on the bed. Empty. The window was closed. The walls were solid. But Valzak was gone. Paranoia spread through the Zokran ranks like poison. Soldiers refused to sleep alone. Patrols huddled together, weapons pointing at every shadow. Officers began suspecting each other of sabotage, conspiracy, betrayal. And still, the humans remained in their colony, apparently doing nothing but maintaining defensive positions. "They're ghosts," whispered one soldier, and the word spread. "The humans are ghosts." Chapter 5. The breaking point on day 14 of the siege. General Kraz stood in his command bunker, staring at reports he could no longer trust. His army had been reduced from 40,000 to 23,000 effective soldiers. Not one human had been killed. Not one engagement had been fought. That his communications officer approached hesitantly. "General, 3rd, 7th, and 9th battalions have laid down their arms." "They've what?" "They're surrendering, sir. 15,000 soldiers. They're walking toward the colony gates with their hands raised, requesting protection from," the officer's voice dropped to a whisper, "from the things in the dark." Kraz felt something inside him crack. He had been a soldier for 30 cycles. He had conquered 12 worlds for the collective. He had never known defeat, but he had also never known fear like this. "Order all remaining forces to fall back to the landing site," he said quietly. "Prepare for evacuation." "Sir, we're abandoning the siege?" Kraz looked at the officer, and in that moment, his aide saw the truth. The general's eyes were the eyes of a broken soldier, haunted by an enemy he had never seen. "We aren't abandoning anything," Kraz said. "We're escaping." As the Zokran forces retreated in disarray, the galaxy watched in stunned silence. Every major power had monitoring stations observing Korvath Prime, waiting to witness humanity's inevitable defeat. Instead, they had witnessed something impossible. A 500-soldier advisory force had broken a 40,000-strong army without firing a shot dot in the Grand Council chamber. Ambassador Vasquez received an urgent communication. She listened for a moment, then stood and addressed the assembled representatives, who sat in shocked silence. "The siege of Korvath Prime has been lifted," she said calmly. "My commanders inform me that Zokran forces are in full retreat. We are ready to proceed to the next phase of operations, pending council approval." Commander Vex, who had laughed so heartily 2 weeks ago, could barely find his voice. "How?" he whispered. "How did you do it?" Vasquez's smile was cold and sharp. "We did what humans do best, Commander. We got inside their heads and made them afraid of the dark." The chamber remained silent as the implications sank in. "Now," Vasquez continued, her voice pleasant and professional, "shall we discuss deploying additional advisors to other contested worlds? I believe you'll find our services quite effective." Asterisk the Council's investigation. 3 days after the retreat from Korvath Prime, Ambassador Terran convened an emergency session of the Galactic Council. This time, the chamber was packed. Representatives who had previously sent junior diplomats now attended personally. The insectoid Vrix Queen herself had made the journey, the first time she had left her throne world in a century. "We demand answers," Commander Vex stated, though his tone lacked its previous arrogance. "The Council requires a full briefing on human military capabilities and methodology. What happened on Korvath Prime defies all established principles of warfare." Ambassador Vasquez stood, nodding gracefully. "Of course, Commander. Transparency is essential among allies. I have brought Colonel Sarah Chun, commander of our Korvath Prime operation, to provide a comprehensive briefing. The chamber's main entrance opened, and Colonel Chun walked in. She was smaller than most species expected, barely 1.7 meters tall, with dark hair pulled into a practical bun, and eyes that seemed to catalog everything they observed. She wore a simple military uniform with no decorations, no insignia beyond her rank. To the assembled representatives, she looked utterly unremarkable. That ordinariness was somehow more unsettling than any display of weapons or armor could have been. "Honored representatives," Chun began, her voice calm and measured, "I understand you have questions about our operation. I will answer them fully. But first, I need to correct a critical misunderstanding." A holographic display materialized behind her, showing Korvath Prime's settlement from orbit. "You believe we fought the Zokran forces. We did not." She paused, letting that sink in. "You believe we engaged them in guerrilla warfare, using stealth and surprise attacks. We did not." Another pause. "You believe we suffered casualties, that we paid a price for victory. We did not. Then what did you do?" Devrik's queen demanded, her translator amplifying the clicks and whistles of her native language. Chun's expression didn't change. "We sat in our bunkers, monitored our sensors, and waited. We haven't lost a single soldier. In fact, most of my personnel never left base camp." The chamber erupted in confusion. Representative Silvara's containment sphere rippled with agitation. "That's impossible. We watched the siege collapse. Zokran soldiers vanished. Their command structure disintegrated." "Yes," Chun agreed simply. "It did. But if you didn't attack them, we didn't need to attack them, Representative. We needed them to attack themselves." Chun manipulated the holographic display, bringing up tactical maps. "Which brings me to the core of human military doctrine. You asked what happened on Korvath Prime. The answer is simple. We waged psychological warfare." Chapter 2. The Human Method Explained. Chun activated a new series of displays, showing detailed breakdowns of the Korvath Prime operation. Warfare, as practiced by most galactic species, focuses on physical superiority, bigger weapons, stronger armor, larger armies. You fight to destroy your enemy's capacity to make war. She zoomed in on specific locations around the former Zokran encampments. Humanity learned long ago that the most vulnerable target isn't the enemy's body, it's their mind. We don't destroy the capacity to make war. We destroy the will to make war. "Explain," Terran said quietly, his feathers completely still. Phase 1. Isolation. Chun highlighted communication relay points. "We deployed micro-drones, millions of them, each no larger than your smallest claw. Commander Vex. They infiltrated the Zokran communication network and introduced subtle distortions. Not enough to be obviously sabotage, just enough to make messages unreliable. Officers began to doubt what they heard. Units lost confidence in their orders." She shifted the display. Phase 2. Uncertainty. "We used holographic projectors and acoustic manipulation to create phantom contacts. Soldiers saw movement that wasn't there, heard footsteps behind them in empty corridors. Nothing threatening, nothing they could definitely identify, just constant, nagging awareness that something was wrong." Merchant Prince Zexalon leaned forward. "But the disappearances? The soldiers who vanished?" Chun's expression remained neutral. Phase 3. Confusion. "We used targeted sedative aerosols delivered by microdrones. Zokran soldiers would fall unconscious during patrol rotations or guard shifts. Our drones would then relocate them, sometimes just 50 meters away, sometimes to other units' territories. They would wake up disoriented, unable to explain what happened. Their comrades would report them missing. Some were found," Vex rumbled. "Some were never found." "Correct." Some we transported to detention facilities beneath the colony facilities the Zokran didn't know existed. We fed them, treated them well, and kept them comfortable. Many are still there, unharmed. Others we simply moved far enough from their units that they became genuinely lost in the wilderness. Korvath Prime's terrain is harsh. Disoriented soldiers wandered for days. The Vrix Queen's mandibles clicked rapidly. The sealed rooms? Officers found with their armor empty, doors locked from inside? Micro-drones again, Chun explained, showing microscopic footage. They can disassemble Zokran armor from the inside. It takes approximately 40 minutes per soldier. We would sedate the officer, remove them through ventilation systems that your sensors can't detect because the drones excavate new passages and seal them behind themselves. We'd leave the empty armor to be discovered. Perfect locked room mystery. This is monstrous, Silvara whispered. This is warfare, Chun corrected. But notice, not one Zokran soldier died. Not one suffered permanent harm. We could have killed them all. Instead, we broke their morale and sent them home alive. Which approach is monstrous? Representative, the one that kills, or the one that terrifies? Commander Vex stood slowly, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. You weaponized fear. Itself, yes. You made an army of 40,000 hardened warriors, afraid of shadows and sounds, and their own. Minds, yes. And you did this without firing a single shot. Chun met his gaze steadily. We fired millions of shots, Commander. You just couldn't hear them. Every drone deployment was a shot. Every falsified communication was a shot. Every planted rumor, every unexplained disappearance, every shadow that moved wrong, all shots. All carefully aimed at the enemy's psychology. She advanced the display to show psychological assessment graphs. By day 10, the Zokran forces were experiencing unit cohesion collapse. By day 12, command authority had degraded by 70%. By day 14, the entire army was non-functional as a fighting force, not because they couldn't fight, but because they could no longer trust their senses, their orders, or each other. You didn't defeat them, Theron said, understanding dawning in his eyes. You made them defeat themselves. Exactly, Ambassador. The human approach to warfare isn't about being stronger. It's about making the enemy weaker not in body, but in mind and spirit. Chapter 3. Operation Nightfall. The Zokran Homeworld. The Council has a proposal, Theron said after a long silence. The Zokran Collective's leadership remains intact on their homeworld of Zoktar. They're already rebuilding their forces. They'll attack again within months. Chun considered for a moment, then nodded. Yes, but understand what we did on Korvath Prime was a limited operation against a single army. What you're asking for is something far more comprehensive. We would need to deploy multiple teams, coordinate across an entire planetary defense network, and target not just soldiers, but the collective's leadership itself. Can it be done without mass casualties? The Vrix Queen asked. That depends on how quickly they surrender, Chun replied. We can offer no guarantees in warfare, but our goal remains the same. Break their will, not their bodies. The Council voted unanimously. Operation Nightfall was authorized. 72 hours. That's how long it took for the Zokran Collective to collapse, the human deployment to Zoktar consisted of 2,000 personnel special operations teams trained in psychological warfare, intelligence operatives, and technical specialists. They never engaged in direct combat. They didn't need to. On Hour 1, the Collective's military communication network experienced cascading failures. Orders became scrambled. Units reported to wrong commanders. Defense positions received contradictory instructions. On Hour 12, the High Command's secure bunker complex began experiencing environmental anomalies. Temperature fluctuations. Unexplained sounds in ventilation systems. Shadows that security footage couldn't explain. The leadership demanded investigations. On Hour 24, 3 members of the High Command disappeared from their quarter-sealed rooms. Guards outside, no possible escape routes. They reappeared 6 hours later, sedated and confused, in completely different sectors of the bunker. They couldn't explain how they'd been moved. On Hour 36, the Collective's intelligence services began receiving reports of human infiltration, hundreds of sightings, thousands of suspected operatives. Every report was investigated. Every investigation found nothing. The paranoia spread like infection. On Hour 48, Grand Marshal Corvex, Supreme Military Commander of the Collective, was found in his office, staring at his tactical displays with 4 sidearms drawn, guarding against threats only he could see. His aide reported that the Marshal had been awake for 36 hours straight, convinced that shapeshifters were infiltrating the command structure. On Hour 60, the High Command members began accusing each other of collaboration with humanity. 3 leaders were arrested by their colleagues on suspicion of treason. 2 escaped and went into hiding within their own headquarters. Trust evaporated. On Hour 72, Grand Marshal Corvex contacted the Galactic Council directly, bypassing his own government's communication protocols. "We surrender," he said simply, his voice hollow with exhaustion. "Tell the humans to stop. Please, just make them stop." Chapter 4. The Galaxy's New Reality. Surrender ceremony took place on neutral ground, Council Diplomatic Station, orbiting the dead world of Terminus 9. Grand Marshal Corvex signed the treaty with shaking hands, his eyes constantly darting to shadows and corners, searching for threats that weren't there. "Your forces never touched our homeworld," he said to Colonel Chun, who stood across the table in her plain uniform. "We detected no landings, no orbital bombardments, no troop movements." "How did you do it?" Chun's expression remained professional. "We used the same principles as Corvath Prime Marshal, just on a larger scale. Micro-drones in your ventilation systems, holographic projectors, acoustic generators, targeted sedatives, and most importantly," she paused, "we used your own fears against you. Every species has them. Humans simply learned to weaponize them. We have fought wars for 300 cycles," Corvex said quietly. "We have conquered 27 worlds. We faced opponents stronger, faster, better armed than ourselves. But we've never faced an enemy like humanity. You don't fight with honor. You don't fight with courage. You just ... win." "Yes," Chun agreed. "We do." After the ceremony, the council representatives gathered in a private chamber. Ambassador Terran addressed Colonel Chun directly. "You've shown us a new form of Warfare 1 that makes traditional military might obsolete. The council has a request." He hesitated. "Teach us. Establish a training program. Share your knowledge with our forces, so that we might defend ourselves if another threat emerges." Chun exchanged glances with Ambassador Vasquez, who nodded slightly. "We can establish what you're asking for," Chun said slowly. "But you need to understand what you're really requesting. You're not asking us to teach you tactics or weapons deployment. You're asking us to teach you how to break minds, how to weaponize fear, how to turn an enemy's thoughts against themselves." "Yes," Terran said. "That is precisely what we're asking. Do you understand where we learned these skills?" Chun's voice took on a harder edge. "Humans didn't develop psychological warfare to fight aliens. We developed it to fight each other. For thousands of years before we reached the stars, we practiced these techniques on our own kind. We became masters of terror and manipulation because we had to, because our own species was our greatest threat. She pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's history wars, conflicts, intelligence operations spanning millennia. Every technique we used against the Zokran, we first used against ourselves. The micro-drones, developed from surveillance technology, we used to spy on our own populations. The psychological manipulation, refined through centuries of propaganda, espionage, and psychological operations between human nations. The ability to break an enemy's will? We learned that in prison camps, in interrogation rooms, in wars where we committed atrocities against our own species. The chamber had gone silent. We are good at this, Chun continued, because we had 10,000 years to practice on the only enemy available, ourselves. We are masters of warfare, not because we're stronger or smarter than you, but because we're survivors of ourselves. Every human carries the genetic memory of being both predator and prey, hunter and hunted, torturer and victim. Commander Vex spoke quietly, his earlier arrogance completely gone. And you want us to understand this before we learn from you. I want you to understand what you're inviting into your cultures, Chun said. Once you learn to wage war like humans do, you can't unlearn it. You'll see threats everywhere. You'll question every shadow. You'll weaponize psychology not just against external enemies, but potentially against internal dissent, political opposition, anyone you perceive as a threat. This knowledge has a price. Chapter 5. Epilogue. The price of victory. 6 months later, the Terran Warfare Academy opened on a remote moon orbiting a neutral star system. Representatives from 37 species attended the inaugural class. They learned to think like humans, to see warfare not as a contest of strength, but as a battle of minds. Colonel Chun stood in her office, looking out at the training facilities below. Ambassador Vasquez joined her, carrying 2 cups of coffee, a human beverage that had become surprisingly popular among certain alien species. Having second thoughts? Vasquez asked, handing her a cup. Always, Chun admitted. We've made the galaxy safer from external threats. But we've also made it more paranoid, more suspicious, more human in its fears. That's the price of survival, Vasquez said. The council made their choice. They saw what we could do and decided they'd rather be like us than be victims. Did they make the right choice? Vasquez was quiet for a moment, watching alien students practice surveillance detection drills in the courtyard below. Ask me in 100 years. Either we'll have created a more secure galaxy, or we'll have taught everyone how to create their own personal hells. Sean nodded slowly. You know what keeps me up at night? It's not that we taught them psychological warfare. It's how good we are at it. What does it say about humanity that we mastered the art of breaking minds so completely that we can teach it like mathematics? It says we're survivors, Vasquez replied, and that we learned to survive by becoming the thing that scared us most ourselves. Down in the training facility, a Korthan warrior practiced interrogation resistance techniques, learning to defend his mind against psychological manipulation. In another building, a Vrix intelligence operative studied human history, analyzing how propaganda shaped societies. In a third facility, students from 12 species learned to deploy microdrones and plan psychological operations. The galaxy was learning humanity's greatest secret, that the most dangerous weapon in the universe wasn't a bomb or a laser or a warship. It was the mind specifically, a human mind that had spent 10,000 years learning every possible way to break, manipulate, and destroy other minds. The Zokran collective never recovered. Their forces disbanded, their conquered worlds were liberated, and their homeworld entered a period of isolationist recovery. But the real victory wasn't territorial or political. The real victory was that every species in the galaxy now knew humanity didn't win wars by being stronger. They won by making their enemies afraid to fight. On Earth, in the headquarters of the Terran Strategic Command, Analysts monitored reports from the Warfare Academy with mixed feelings. They had achieved their objective, establishing humanity as the galaxy's preeminent military power through demonstration of capability. But they had also unleashed something that couldn't be controlled. Asterisk. We've created a galaxy of paranoid strategists. One analyst noted during a briefing. Better than a galaxy of victims, another replied. And perhaps that was the ultimate truth of Operation Nightfall and humanity's entry into galactic warfare. Sometimes the price of survival is becoming the monster under the bed. Sometimes safety requires making others afraid of the dark. Humanity had always known this truth. They had lived it, refined it, perfected it through millennia of their own internal conflicts. Now they had shared that knowledge with the galaxy. Whether that made the universe safer or more dangerous remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. When the next threat emerged from the darkness between stars, it would face not one species that waged psychological warfare, but dozens. And they would all have learned from the best teachers, from the species that had made fear itself into the ultimate weapon. Colonel Chun finished her coffee and returned to her desk, where lesson plans for advanced psychological operations awaited her review. Outside, alien students marched in formation, learning human military protocols, human strategic thinking, human methods of warfare. They were learning to fight like ghosts, to win without being seen, to break enemies without firing a shot. They were learning to be human. And the galaxy would never be quite the same again. Asterisk.